I remember when I first listened to it, I was really impressed by the sort of how more complex the riffs are on this record. I'm not saying that there was like a more of a spice, I think, in the mix there. You know what I'm trying to say when it comes to the songwriting. Without like a circle of friends to make recommendations, I tend to get stuck in my alley. You know what I mean? And you know, and I'm always getting emails and sort of promotional stuff, and it's hard to sift through and really pay attention to like what without like a show like Necrosphere or friends like Carl, or friends like Evan. It's like hard to get a fuller bandwidth of stuff to listen to. I don't know. I was talking about this at band practice one night, and I was just like, yeah, it sounds like the record was recorded in a practice space, but like by like with very good players, and the mix is like so in your face and just nasty sounding.
Right now, my favorite album, the Into the Necrosphere official best album of 2025. Greetings, Legion. Welcome to episode 303 of Into the Necrosphere. The time is finally here. I will be revealing on this episode my favorite album of 2025. I will also share with you my top 10 releases of the last 12 months. And joining me in that prestigious endeavor is going to be my very good friend, Mike Hill. Mike, of course, is a fellow horseman of the podcasting apocalypse. He is the host of Everything Went Black, as well as Necromaniacs. He is the mind behind the brilliant band Tombs, and he also has another project, which I've shown some love to on Into the Necrosphere in the past. It's called Scorpion Throne. He has just put out a brand new EP under that banner, and it sounds something like this.
From God.
Kicking off Into the Necrosphere this week with some premium unsanctioned filth. That was Scorpion Throne, taken from their brand new EP. The song is called 2.3. So some sort of weird satanic numerology that Mike Hill is involved in, but whatever inspires him to do music like this, I'm on board for. That is sensational. And as always, the Scorpion Throne Bandcamp link will be posted in the description to the podcast. Head over there, buy yourself some music if you like what you heard, and let Mike and the gang know who it was who sent you. Make sure as well, if you are in an unsigned band and you want me to hear your stuff, you can head over to intothenecrosphere.com. There's a contact page on the website. You can get in touch with me that way. Send me a Bandcamp link. Please don't make me pay for the privilege of featuring your music on the show. But if I like what I hear, I will give you guys some love. You'll also be on the website in my unsanctioned filth hall of infamy. So, that'll hopefully drive a few more listens your way and a few more fans. You know you got it made in the shade when the Legion likes your work. A reminder as well. Now, I've already mentioned the Horseman of the podcasting apocalypse, but a reminder of the rest of us. Brandon Legion is your man every other Monday. He brings you Horrorwolf 666. Yours truly casts hexes and slays poses every Tuesday on Into the Necrosphere. Next week, my guest is the legendary drummer Nick Barker, former drummer for Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir, drummer for Lockup, Brujeria, and a bunch of other bands. This was a heavy, heavy conversation. As you know, he has been struggling with some serious health problems for the last 3 years. And so, this was one of the most honest and introspective conversations I think you're going to find with him anywhere. That is coming your way next week. Absolutely essential listening. And then the week after, I've got a returning legend. Sakis Tulus and I caught up this past Friday on the eve of Rotten Christ setting off for North America for this Godless 4 tour that they're going to go on with Behemoth, Deicide, and Immolation. Really fun conversation. Sakis was in fine form. Very typical Sakis. You know what I mean if you've seen the other conversations he and I have had. So that's going to be coming your way in 2 weeks' time from now. I often say this, but I'm going to repeat it again. There are so many podcasts and YouTube channels and just different ways in which you could be spending your time. But the fact that you choose to listen to Into the Necrosphere week in and week out is pretty goddamn cool to me. And I will certainly do everything I possibly can to earn your support week in and week out. Moving on with the Horseman scheduling, we already mentioned Mike and Everything Went Black. Also on a Wednesday, we've got Iblis Manifestations with Cheyenne from the band Trivax. On a Thursday, Necromaniacs, a show you should never miss. Mike Hill is joined by his very capable co-hosts, the Professor Jeff Kashid and the Sheriff Mike Scondado. And then we also have on a Thursday and again on a Sunday, Soul Knox, hosted by the Sinister Minister himself, Carl Haikara. That's another one that never misses. And Carl is a guest that never misses. If you missed part 2 of my top 30 of 2025 countdown, that happened last week. Carl was my co-host for that one. And that is a episode that I've got a bunch of really positive feedback on. When I'm done talking to Mike, and after the excitement of my big reveal is finally done, don't go anywhere because the fun is just getting started. On the weekly news rant, I'm going to be giving you my first impressions of brand new tracks by Cruel Force, Tulus, Necrofier, Crippled Black Phoenix, Uada, Winterfylleth, Slaughter Day, In Eternum, and Carnivore AD, and then a bunch of smelling of ballsack waste men get rounded up for one of the most violent swirlies I've ever dished out anywhere. That's coming up later on in the show. First, though, sit back as I am joined by my very good friend Mike Hill, and I reveal the album of 2025 according to yours truly. All right, welcome back to the podcast. And before I get started, Mike, I want to ask you this question because it's been plaguing on my mind. I've never asked you before. But in your public persona as Michael D.C. Hill, what does D.C. stand for?
Daniel Christopher. Those are my 2 middle initials.
Okay, all right. Not Dominator, Crusher, or,
no, nothing
Destroyer, Conan, Hill.
Like Destroyer of Christendom. No, that's not
it. Yeah. Crushing Christendom. How's everything been going with you, my man?
It's been busy, since the beginning of the year. just primarily doing a lot of work related things. Getting the band back in shape. We've got after the holidays, we've got some dates that are going to be announcing for for the spring. Just trying to burn off those extra pounds I put on during the Christmas holiday.
You're a married man now. That's when things get particularly dangerous. I mean, I think pre getting married, I had a bit of a COVID bump weight wise, and I've just never been able to shake it off. I fortunately managed to contain the damage when I was away in South Africa. But when you're happy and you're in a relationship that's not causing you all sorts of misery and sleepless nights, the pounds do tend to pack on.
Yeah, it's been tough, man. I got to be honest. Just when I used to cook for myself, it was just like, all right, here's a piece of chicken and some broccoli, and let's call it a night. And now it's like there's options. So my wife really likes to cook, and I haven't cooked at all since I've been married. So I've been eating, a lot of cool stuff.
Is your wife of Italian heritage?
No. Well, actually, she is. She's part Italian and part Ukrainian.
Okay, all right. Now I was going to say, whether if she's Italian, that's the real danger, because then if the food's delicious too. You got the pastas, you got the cream sauces, all that sort of thing. So that's a killer, especially for a man older than 40.
Yeah, she has Italian relatives. She's part Italian, but she looks, when you look at her, she looks like Eastern European. Like she's got like that Ukrainian, like Eastern European like look.
And you mentioned the last time that you were on the podcast that you were in the process of house shopping, looking for a new home. Have you managed to secure the new hill compound?
Not yet, man. We've been looking for like 6 months. It's got to be at least 6 months. And a couple places. There was one place we wanted to get, but it ended up getting snatched from underneath us, which sucked. But other than that, it's just been a lot of like, there's always been something about all these places that we didn't like. Either it was like, the commute was too far, or there was some aspect of the house that we didn't like. And this is it, man. I'm not moving after this, man. They're gonna have to bury me in the backyard. I'm done moving after this move. So
this is what's called generational property. You're handing this over to the cats when you go. You got security concerns as well. You need a place to be able to rest your sniper arm.
Yeah.
Dude, and I've been meaning to tell you, firstly, thank you very much for sending me the second Scorpion Throne release while I was away on vacation. I had such fucking atrocious internet. I was kind of, whatever you saw me posting on the socials, it was usually when we were sat in a restaurant, and I couldn't exactly crank up the black metal there. But I've been looking forward to this. I loved the first release. Superb work on this one.
Oh, thank you. There was a little bit more like intention, I think, on this one. Like the first one was like very like written like within the confines of this very heavy moment. And the second one, it's there was more it was more of a slightly positive outlook in creating the music. It was more like, all right, cool, we have a band, let's make more music and do something interesting with it and make it different than what we're doing with Tombs and what the other guys are doing in their other bands that they play in. So that was like a very I was looking forward to making it different and to kind of go into this like different sort of aspect of music I enjoy listening to. So I'm glad you like it, Jackie. You really
it's superb. And I know, obviously you've been talking about doing a couple of other things outside of kind of the extreme metal realm. You think 2026 is going to be the year when we get to listen to some of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of demos I have on my computer. Like I said, it's a stretch, so I want a lot of like false starts and sort of missteps with that stuff. But before I release anything on my own that's markedly different, I want to make sure that it meets like my criteria, before I just like, put it out into the world and, not be happy with it. It has to have like that test of like, if I write a song and like a month later, if I still like it, then it's something I'm going to hang on to usually.
Yeah. Well, On the topic of criteria, let's dive into the main event, the grand finale of the top 30 releases of 2025. And as I said in the intro, we're going to be doing mine and Mike's top 10s. Just to refresh anybody's memory who might have missed the previous two episodes, I'm going to review my top 30 to or my number 30 to 11, I should say. At number 30, we had 1914 with Viribus Unitas. At number 29, we had Black Braid with Black Braid 3. At number 28, we had This Gift is a Curse with Air. At number 27, Internal Bleeding, Settle All Scores. 26, Phobocosm, Gateway. 25, Glorious Depravity, Death Never Sleeps. 24, Cryptopsy, An Insatiable Violence. 23, Despised Icon, Shadowwork. 22, Golsveard, Braiding the Stories. 21, Jade, Mysteries of a Flowery Dream. 20, Krigsgrav, Stormcaller. 19, Drugoth, The Indomitable Spirit of Merciless Vengeance. 18, Abduction, Extensionismus. 17, Terje de Horde, Our Breath is Not Ours Alone. 16, Swartzen, Vortex Destroyer. 15, Memberus, Black Plasma Armor. 14, Prescription, Desolate Divine. 13, Enthroned, Ash Spawn. 12, Nexion, Sundrung. And then at number 11, Lamp of Murmur, The Dreaming Prince in Ecstasy, which brings us to our present point in time. And I think we will start, Mike, with you giving us your number 10.
Okay. Before I do that, I just want to mention that Lamp of Murmur, that's a band that I really never thought about listening to until I heard you guys talking about it. And it's actually quite good.
It sounds to me like it'll be completely up your street. And it's, I mean, I've liked previous Lamp of Murmur releases, like I said, when I spoke to Carl about it. But what really took me by surprise was all the new wave kind of post-punk goth influences, especially on the second half of this new record. But the way that it's deployed is so fucking brilliant and so well done. I mean, that record... I've had a lot of the same feedback from people, you know, saying that they started checking it out after I'd spoken about it last week and, you know, fell in love with the album. But to me, it just completely blindsided me. But I couldn't stop listening to the album for, you know, a good 2-3 weeks. It's phenomenal.
Definitely. Yeah, I've been on a bit of a tear with that one now as a result. All right, so my number 10 is Drugoth, The Indomitable Spirit of Merciless Vengeance. And you know, he's a friend of mine, obviously. So there is no bias. And similar to you stated this earlier in an earlier episode that if a friend makes a record, there seems to, even with me, I feel like I put more of a critical eye to that material. And you know, anything that Drugoth's done, I think has been great. And this particular record has like more venom, you know, like more sort of vitriol in it. You know, it's a more you know, very, very abrasive sort of output this time around than maybe the last record.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Like I said last week, this is another one that caught me by surprise purely because you know, it's such a swerve over its predecessor. You know, whereas the predecessor is all about the grooves and the scumbag beats, as you call them.
Exactly.
You know, this is just, you know, pedal to the floor from start to finish, and with the exception of the final track, never lets up. But it's an album that really, really works, I think, as an end-to-end listen. It has hints of old school hardcore, old school punk thrown in with, you know, really fast, brutal, aggressive black metal of the Marduk persuasion. And I said it to Drugoth when he first sent me the album. It took me a couple of listens to clock onto it, but I said to him, it feels like you are doing your Panzer Division Marduk, and, you know, I'm on board for it. I love the album as well.
Yeah, it's definitely in that vein of you know, hard, you know, just abrasive, like full on, you know, black metal.
Yeah. All right. At number 10 for me, this was a record that basically threw my whole list into disarray when I first heard it. It was released by Deborah Morty on the 12th of December. I first discovered it on the news Rant, and as soon as I heard the opening 2 minutes of the first single they released, I knew it was going to take me. I was going to need to do some recalibration. The band is from Iceland. They're called Mastermind. The album is called Drumsinner Elsens, and I think one of the things that I love so much about Icelandic black metal is that there is definitely more than a few things that bands from Iceland have in common with the rest of their Scandinavian brethren. But kind of like the relationship that Australia has to the Western Hemisphere when it comes to extreme music, there is always something about Icelandic bands that just sounds very distinct and very unique. And so with Marshtrith, you get these, there'll be these sequences that remind you of Deathspell Omega. Then there'll be these sequences that are just incredibly atmospheric and hypnotic and almost ritualistic. And then it'll immediately kind of give way to just blasting aggression, but all done in that same, quintessential Icelandic way that you would hear from Mistyrming, Sinmara, and all the very best Icelandic bands. So, this album could potentially have been significantly higher had I had more time to dwell on it. Proving my point, as has many releases on this list, that you need to wait until the end of the year before you do your list. This was a surprise entry at the end of the year, and it is absolutely sensational.
I'm totally unfamiliar with that. I got to go check that out. It sounds awesome.
Oh, dude, it's 100% up your street. I've no doubt about it.
Yeah, and the fact that it came out in December is even more, December, it feels, a lot of things come out in December and I'm like, preoccupied with other things and it slips right by me. So I gotta go back and check that out.
This was a good year for releases in December. If I look at the number of December releases that made it onto my list, so you definitely have at least 3 or 4. The new Enthroned, obviously, that was on there as well. The new Darvaza may or may not make an appearance. I think anyone if you're a betting man, you're going to bet on it being on my list. But yeah, so I mean, between like November and December, like the end of year stuff that came out as Decibel were already proclaiming, whatever they proclaimed to be their best album of the year. I can't even remember. I think it was Dead Guy, actually. There was a lot of really, really good stuff, and sadly slept upon by the poser zines and the websites, but not slept upon at Into the Necrosphere.
Yeah, it's funny to publish a list so early in advance. It feels a little sort of I don't know. It's irresponsible. You know what I mean? So
I think that's the right word. They don't do the Oscars for 2025 in November. So, right. If you're going to do it, treat it seriously, is my view. All right, your number 9.
My number 9 is The Great Satan by Trivax. And that record is every record that Trivax releases seems to beat the shit out of the record that came before it. And, this one's for sure is like, I remember when I first listened to it, I was really impressed by how more complex the riffs are on this record. I'm not saying that there was like a more of a spice, I think, in the mix there. You know what I'm trying to say when it comes to the songwriting. And I feel like the tempo is like a few BPM faster too. And this is definitely and there's also some variety on the record too. There's like these kind of like cool, like subtle passages on the album too, which I really enjoy. There's a lot of dynamics on it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, funnily enough, my number 9 is also The Great Satan by Trivax. So, I'll dive straight into my thoughts on this. It's been a real pleasure, and we've spoken already about having friends in bands, but I'll just summarize by saying I'm incredibly lucky to have an exceptionally high number of very talented friends, and I regard Cheyenne to be extraordinarily talented. And what has been a real pleasure for me is to see. I mean, I've gotten to know the man and I've seen him change a lot, but to see him mature and evolve as a songwriter and as a musician and as an artist alongside his bandmates, Sully in particular, who's been in the band since 2018, that has genuinely been a joy to behold. If you go back to the debut, the debut full length Sin, that was a competent black metal album that showed a lot of promise. But when Eloah Burns Out came out in 2023, I mean, that's when things really kind of snapped into focus for the band, and that by itself is a great record. And then I completely agree with you. Its sequel, absolutely beats the shit out of that.
Yeah.
And it beats it on really every front. Songwriting quality is better. The production is better. The performances are better. Cheyenne sounds better. I think what really resonated with me on this album is the fact that, to an increasing degree, Cheyenne kind of lets in some of his Middle Eastern, Persian, Iranian influences, which in turn, I think really elevates the concept of the band. Because the one thing that he does and takes, I think, extremely seriously is he represents his country and his heritage extraordinarily well. And a lot of that passion and a lot of that really that sort of ingrained from the gut love of his country, but also the sadness for where his country is right now, it comes out in their music. I mean, especially on a song like Operation Ramadan. And it means that, particularly based on where we're at this point in time, I mentioned it on last week's episode as well, I truly believe that Trivax is, in terms of extreme metal bands with something significant to say, I think they're one of the most important bands in the scene right now.
Yeah, I agree. And he's also just a man with a vision too. And that's something I respond to. And, and also just this sort of reluctance to be, to speak badly about Islam too, which is like an interesting religion, because it kind of folds in like two different aspects of the compassionate, version versus the more militant sort of aspects of Muhammad's journey through either Mecca or Medina. So there's like two facets to the approaches to the religion. But the same way that it's fair game to like brutalize Christianity, it should be fair game to criticize all other religions too. And I tip my hat to him, give him respect for embracing that.
Yeah. I know he's already working on new material for the next Trivax album, and he's hinted at it being a lot heavier on, I think he even said it on this podcast. One thing that I would definitely say, if I were a producer, or if I were to be, if I were to be able to offer unsolicited advice, is I would say absolutely make it heavier. Go with what you're inspired to do, but never get away from what makes the band special. And what makes the band special are those Persian influences and those Middle Eastern influences. It becomes particularly apparent on songs like the first track, Atash, which is kind of just basically an introduction to the record, but it builds the tension so well. And it's such a massive, just huge sound that envelops you from the beginning of the record. I would never, ever move away from that. I would, as a matter of fact, encourage him to bring more of it into the band. But, as a debut on Osmos Productions, I think this record has definitely made a lot of people pay attention. I know that their tour with Apsu has been really successful. So I still contend, I think we're going to see very big things from Trivax in the next 5 years.
I would second that. I imagine them playing on big stages in their future. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we can move on to your number 8.
This is, speaking of December, this is a late year pick for me. And I got to be honest, I am not that familiar with their previous material, but Devarza, We Are Him. I think Carl might have sent me the link to this, around the time that album came out, Carl Hikara. And dude, it's just like, there's 2 records. Another one is on this list too. That's like, my kind of garage kettlebell, soundtrack. And this is a sick record. I love this album. And I'm not that familiar with this band actually. This is really kind of my entry point into their catalog.
Well, I'll hold off saying very much more because, again, as I said, anyone who's anyone knows it's on the list. It's just a question of where. But I mean, if you're not familiar with Devarza, definitely a band you should get familiar with. If you like Behexen, Ritual Death, Horner, like grimy, filthy Finnish and Norwegian black metal, it is definitely a band that you're gonna dig. There's no question about that.
it's like so easy to bypass bands too, because there's so many bands, and just like without like a circle of friends to make recommendations, I tend to get stuck in my alley. You know what I mean? And and I'm always getting emails and sort of promotional stuff, and it's hard to sift through and really pay attention to like what without like a show like Necrosphere or friends like Carl, or friends like Evan. It's like hard to get a fuller bandwidth of stuff to listen to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I get sent a ton of promos continually, and a lot of it just eventually kind of becomes noise. It just, it just sort of the emails blend into each other very often. I won't even open them. And, as you say, you're probably missing a bunch of stuff there. It has now become a point with me where certain record labels, like if Norma Evangelium Diaboli release something, or Territor Possessions has put something out, or increasingly Dark Descent Records, I'm always going to check it out. But I mean, there's a bunch of independent bands that'll put out stuff that's absolutely fucking brilliant. I mean, Drugoth is one. Permafog, a band that ranked very highly on my 2024 list, I think. They're independent. So, I mean, I hope that I can provide some form of curation, but again, I can't. I'm a working man. I can't get my head around every fucking thing that comes out. So that's why these, doing these with you, with Carl, with Nathan is so much fun, because it's always different, different perspectives, and you guys each have a different flavor in your taste of music.
Oh yeah, Nathan Glover's got great input too, man. I he and I actually have been communicating over the last few months, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. All right. At number 8 for me, we've got Bloed aus Noord with Ethereal Horizons, a late year release, November the 28th, put out by Deborah Morty Productions. The sequel to the, probably in my view, not as warmly received Disharmonium Nahab as was the reception for Disharmonium Undreamable Abysses. And I've seen copy, PR, whatever you want to call it, go around suggesting that Ethereal Horizons is the conclusion to the Disharmonium trilogy. I don't buy that, because the album has nothing in common virtually musically with either of those two albums. It is far closer in style to Hallucinogen that came out in 2019. I'd also say there's elements of Cosmosophy from 2012, Memoria Vetusta 2 from 2009. But there's also, I feel like, probably new, and I hate to use the word again, new horizons opening up for Bloed aus Noord with this album, because some of it almost kind of incorporates, I'd say, more traditional atmospheric black metal into all of the other psychedelic stuff and the progressive stuff and all the other craziness that Winterfylleth is so well known for. But he pulls it together across 7 songs in a way that, the more I listen to this album, the more it starts to move up closer to being my favorite Bloed aus Noord album ever. And considering how long he's been doing this for, the fact that he can still bring out something that surprises you and that engages you to that degree, that has to be celebrated. And I don't think it's I don't think anyone will be surprised in hearing me say this, but I truly do think that Winterfylleth is, one of the greatest and most original songwriters in the history of the black metal genre. There's no question about that, especially not after this record.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan. Yes, exactly. I feel like this record goes back to your more traditional, ambient influenced black metal with like drum machines and everything, but the progression of the band through the years, like Odinist, like some of their earlier material has always resonated with me. And we'll probably end up talking more about this record. I wager. So,
all right. Well, let's move on then to your number 7.
All right, number 7 for me is Hate Forest, Against All Odds. A little hard to find this record since it's not really streaming anywhere, but if you're in the know with the work of Roman Saenko, this I think is a fantastic record. And I think it was probably Hell's Headbangers. I ordered it when it came out, and this is like an early entry into my top 10 for this year.
Yeah, Carl and I spoke about this last week. Definitely an album I needed to spend more time with. For me, the cream of the crop when it comes to Hate Forest is remains Purity. Came out in 2003. But with both you and Carl giving your endorsement, I definitely will need to check it out again.
Yeah, definitely. I think Carl is the one who told me that the record came out, and then I found it after. I had to either look on YouTube or order the hard copy or something like that. So
yeah, they're on the naughty list, of course. That's why you won't be able to find them anywhere, along with Clandestine Blaze. Anyway, moving on to my number 7, we've got Paradise Lost with Ascension. Released September the 19th by Nuclear Blast. Potentially an album that I think people are going to be surprised me not rating quite as high as they might have thought. But I will say, when it comes to this top 10, potentially with the exception of my numbers 1 and 2 of reasons I will explain later on in our conversation, these are often interchangeable based on how I'm feeling at the time. I kind of based it on as much calibration as I could do, but I was still reordering and, recalibrating and adjusting the top 10 up till last night. Now, I mean, I've said kind of what I wanted to say about Ascension, talking to Carl, but to reiterate, for me, a spectacular return to form after Obsidian. Obsidian, to me, is a mediocre record by Paradise Lost standards. Ascension is an album that plays far more evenly, in the sense that every single song flows beautifully into the next, but is self-contained, kind of like, Icon or Draconian Times, which is interesting because I recently went back and I listened to the conversation I had with Nick Holmes, and he was talking about how they were inspired by doing the re-recording to Icon for this record. And then they do hit you with a couple of things that we haven't heard from them before, certainly not as to the extent that they do it here. My favorite track on the record, Lay a Wreath Upon the World, is like the closest thing they've ever done to a guitar ballad, which, hits you with this incredible female singing in its crescendo, sort of towards the middle of the song. Just overall, it's astounding to think these guys have made 17 records and they can still produce something like this, where they genuinely sound hungry and excited, hungry to prove themselves, excited by what they're doing, by their art, and I mean, they still sound like Paradise Lost. No one in the band sounds like they've lost a step.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably going to be talking about this record later on too, and I'm not as well versed in their back catalog as you and Carl are. I mean, I've always been a fan, but I'm not so entrenched in their catalog as you guys are, but I do. This record, we'll talk about it later. I'll guarantee you guys this is coming up again.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you could bleed a band, there's a very strong possibility that Paradise Lost would be what comes out of me. I have listened to this band and the entirety of their catalog so many times over the years, and I will never ever forget the day that I heard Gothic for the first time, and just how it just blew my mind completely. I'd never heard something like that before. It was like you were being pulled into this pit, but in the best possible way. It's just they're just a phenomenal band. I think they are getting more recognition now, but there was a period of time. I mean, I would even say now they're not getting enough recognition for what they've done for music and what how much of an influence they've been, and frankly, how many people they've inspired. And it was one of the best experiences of my entire life, getting to go and see that Icon 30 concert of theirs with my daughter, and that being the first show that she ever got to see.
That's awesome. I wish I had gotten a chance to see something like that. That'd have been cool.
Dude, that was absolutely amazing. Okay, so we move on to your number 6.
There's a trend here between 7 and 6. So my number 6 is Clandestine Blaze, Consecration of the Blood, and I'm a fan of all of Roman's bands, including Windswept and Drutka, and I just find Clandestine Blaze to probably be my favorite out of all of the material that dude's been doing. I mean, I even like his like ambient stuff, like the noise. It's not ambient, but his noise stuff, like grunt and just the harsh noise material he puts out. But with Clandestine Blaze, like there's a this particular record too. It sounds raw, but the songwriting is very intricate. like the guitar work, and I don't know. I was talking about this at band practice one night, and I was just like, yeah, it sounds like the record was recorded in a practice space, but like by like with very good players, and the mix is like so in your face and just nasty sounding, and yeah, and this, once again, this record doesn't disappoint, on any level really.
Well, I mean, Miko Asper, who's the man behind Clandestine Blaze, he's been doing this for a very, very long time, and he's worked with some of the absolute elite of the elite with Deathspell Omega. So, it stands to reason that anytime he brings out a Clandestine Blaze record, it's going to be something worth, at the very least, paying attention to, regardless of what you think of him as a person. But again, a record that I heard, but by the point that I listened to it, I had to tap out. I was like, I've changed this list too many times. The door is shut. So, but I definitely concede, very, very good album.
Did I say Roman Sanko, or
you did? Yeah.
It's early here, man. Just got to give you a break.
no, it's fine. Yeah. All right. My number 6, Serpents, Desert Psalms, released on the 18th of April by Norma Evangelium Diaboli. A one-man project by Ainvar Ara. However, I know that Ainvar had a bunch of different people get involved in this. I don't know off the top of my head who everyone is that participated in this, but I know he had, he had some help from folks who he had worked with on Angranost, one of his other bands. The thing about Serpents is, you can go back to this album, and sometimes I would forget why I liked it so much, and then I'd go back to it. And this happened particularly while I was in the calibration phase of my top 30. And the first one or two songs, you're like, oh yeah, this is cool. And then you get to the midpoint of the album, and you realize what a pilgrimage into darkness that this record has taken you on, and it suddenly just hits you like a wave again. Like, oh my God, this is fucking masterful. It's again kind of in a way like another band I'm going to be talking about potentially in just a few minutes. This is an album that combines ritualistic elements with progressive, with aggressive, and it has this ability to just change gears and switch between its different moods at the drop of a hat. But constant, it never throws you. Nothing feels like it's pieced together. One of the things I've just comparing and contrasting. One of the things I've really disliked about recent Metallica releases has been the fact that a lot of times it just sounds like a bunch of riffs thrown together, and it's okay, there we've got a 7-minute song. With Serpents, there's so many ideas all bundled up into one particular song, but the way that it is put together, it just feels like a natural flow. And it just means that all 7 of the songs on this album, and I wouldn't even call them songs, they're compositions. You just can't get enough of them. I mean, it's a punishing album to listen to, but it's one that you just want to go back to again and again, especially if you've been away from it for a couple of months and you go back to it after that. Is this an album that you checked out much? Because I think it would be something you would like.
I need to. It sounds like it. I mean, I like one that falls into that category of things that have been put on the to be listened to list, but I haven't quite got to it yet.
All right. Okay. Well, what is your number 5?
Number 5 for me is Galsweird, Braiding the Stories. With this record, I feel like Gall is moving even more into a different direction than any of the other releases. And there's even this very, for lack of a better term, progressive element to it, which might turn some people off. But for me, it's drawing me deeper into what the record, what he's trying to say with this record, and I know this is this showed up on your list earlier, but yeah, and I know you're a huge Gall fan, but yeah, I'm just I keep wanting to hear what the next thing is with him, because it's such a departure, and it's even further away from any of the work he's done in any of the other bands that he's been worked with.
One thing I'll say about Gall, and I may have mentioned this in the past, but I think it's it's pertinent to bring it up again now. I've met an awful lot of people doing this podcast, and some folks, the public persona differs quite significantly from what you think they're going to be like or what they're like on stage. When it comes to Gol, for better or worse, there is zero pretense about that guy, nothing. Like every single thing about him that you think is exactly what he's like, down to the slightest, physical quirk or trait. The way he looks at you when you speak to him is exactly like you expect it's going to be. But what I like about him, and listening to an album like Braiding the Stories, you can't help but admire that part of who he is as an artist. He really is a law unto himself. He does whatever he wants to do. He's not interested in conforming to any expectations. I don't think we're ever going to hear, although we very well might, but I don't think we're ever going to hear another Ad Majorem Satanas Gloriam from him. But yeah, to your point with Goldsbeard, he's taking us in directions that we've never heard from him before. And even though he's aging like the wine he enjoys to drink, his voice just sounds better and better. I was going to ask you, as a vocalist, you listen to the title track on Braiding the Stories, for example, and of course, I know that he's got a lot of help in the studio and things like that. But I've also seen him perform some of this stuff live, and he sounds fucking unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen any of these newer bands perform here in the States, so it's like, but yeah, the vocals are that's what really gets me, is like his because it's a lot of work, really, a lot of you have to kill your ego really to go from doing extreme vocals to like try to do something more melodic, and it's of course it's tempting to fall back into the just the old style of doing things, and I think that's primarily why I'm so impressed by these new releases that he's doing, because it's a very, very intentional thing to change the way you sing, and it's I got a lot of respect for him on that level. Yeah, so it turns out he's not a big fan of Merlots, I guess, right?
Some Merlots. It was actually a red blend, so it was a Cabernet Franc and a Cabernet Sauvignon blend. I was distraught about that, mate. I was actually at that vineyard in December when we were on vacation. And I had that wine again, and then I had their more expensive flagship wine. And I sat there saying to my wife, I could still not wrap my head around how you don't like this. So the thing for me, what I was what I was fucking bugging out about is I didn't want people to think that Know Nothing Jackie has turned up there with some bullshit cheap wine. I mean, it was really good stuff, and I know wine very well.
Some Boone's Farm with a screw top on it.
Yeah, no, none of that. So, but now that I know his taste, when I go to Bergen again in August or in end of July for Beyond the Gates, I'll take him something that might be more up his street. But I thoroughly enjoyed meeting him, and his partner is a great guy as well. Very, very good dude. Okay, so my number 5 is Titan Blood from the Visceral Abyss, another Norma Evangelium Diaboli release that came out a day after my birthday, March the 28th. It is the sequel to their 2019 masterpiece, The Baneful Choir. I think that From the Visceral Abyss actually steps it up in terms of songwriting quality. And different but same to Serpents. This is a maelstrom of just absolute relentless intensity. Every single song is coal black, but there's so much by way of dynamics going on underneath all of this chaos and all of this blasting and all of this violence. The album was very, very highly acclaimed when it came out, and there's absolutely no surprise why, in my view. I mean, it is on the surface, it sounds like just aggressive, brutal black metal, but there's so much more to it than that. And kind of like Serpents, it's just an album you want to go back to over and over and over every time that you listen to it.
Oh, it's killer, man. That's a good. I had that actually when that came out. That was an early 2025 release, I believe. So that was something that was like, oh, this is probably gonna end up on my list, but it got usurped by some of these others.
All right. What have you got for us at number 4?
My only proper death metal release is at number 4, and that's The Ugliest of All by Werewolves. And similar to Cannibal Corpse, you kind of know what you're going to get with these blokes. You know what I mean? But it's so fucking good, though, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like very, it all revolves around Matt's guitar playing, man. Like that dude, it's like his right hand is like on steroids or something, and I just blown away by like his technique, man. And yeah, it's just a sick record. It's you know what you're gonna get. There's no surprises here, but like their whole vibe is just so brutal and intense. And there is it, and it's a serious. The music is serious, but there's also like this kind of irony to their music as well, which I really appreciate. Like the lyrics have like a darkly humor, like sort of irony to them, which is that's very welcome, in a genre that sometimes takes itself like very seriously,
Yeah. Well, all I'm going to say there is to be discussed. I will bring them up a little later on. But at my number 4, little known underground band Tombs and their song Feral Darkness, released on Redefining Records on October the 17th, as you well know. And Mike, look, firstly, let me say congratulations on an extraordinary release that you got a huge amount of plaudits for. I mean, I know everyone who was on Year had it in their best of list. The members of the Legion who have sent me their top 10s of the year, I don't think there's a single one that didn't have this album in. And when I first heard this, I said to you, it reminded me of The Grand Annihilation. But the more I've gone back and listened to it, the more I think that's actually almost selling it short. It feels to me like there's a culmination here of, knowing you, I know the kind of music that you like. There's definitely elements of the stuff that you've been turned on to over the last couple of years that has found its way onto Feral Darkness, both metal and otherwise. But then there's elements that crop up in differing measures going all the way back to Winter Hours that then also make it onto this album. And what you've managed to do is take the new and the old and bring it together in something that sounds like, in a weird way, a step forward for the band, but at the same time, like a solidification of all of your strengths. I think it is, in terms of performance, one of your finest performances. I think the title track is one of the best things you've ever written. But what's brilliant about the title track is that is a song that you can hear going over with an audience that is more receptive to non-extreme music. But then you've got something like Nightland that, almost is slightly cinematic in its feel. It's just a fucking incredible record. I'm every time I go back and listen to it, I am bedazzled. It's a truly superb work. And I wouldn't say it, I would say exactly the same thing if I didn't know you, but yeah, great work.
Oh, it means a lot to me, Jackie, and even just the response from everyone else that all the Legion. It means a hell of a lot to me, and I'm just happy that I still can make music. You know what I mean, and still have something to put out there, and it's not just some sort of like self-satisfying thing that other people enjoy it. Because that's always the first level of like whether or not I continue with something is if I like it, and I'm just happy that other people can have an experience with it and take something from the music. And but yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that it's sort of this like culmination or marrying of the new and the old, because that really wasn't the intention of the record. It was like, I remember when we first started writing, we have material that didn't make it on the album, and the intention was to make something that was just fast and brutal and just very pissed sounding, and only like one of those songs actually made it on the album, and everything else just developed sort of like naturally. And I guess that's kind of a testament to like just following like the muse as opposed to like making a plan, and I always, whatever my intention is at first, always get sidetracked by like this sort of muse that pulls things in a different direction, you know. And some of these songs, like Nightlands, like that was written like shortly after, like back in 2020. So that's like, that song's been living for like 5 years, and now it's finally been released, and that's like a big, you know, accomplishment, really. So thank you very much.
I think following the muse is exceptionally important, and you know, as you were, before you'd even used that phrase, as you were talking, I sat here kind of thinking, what I think it is, or where I think the magic lies in a record like Feral Darkness. It's that you kind of hit that flow state where you're going with inspiration rather than perspiration. You're not thinking, you're not overthinking the songs. You're playing what is inside of you. You're expressing yourself authentically as an artist. And I mean, that is naturally going to draw from elements of things that you know and love, or that influenced you, or that you grew up with, and you know, things that nowadays excite you and get you going. But yeah, it's a really great record, and I do hope you guys are going to be playing some more shows for this, and you know, getting this under people's attention, because I feel like this is an album that could elevate Tombs with the right amount of push behind it.
Yeah, we're, like I said, we got some shows we're announcing in the spring, and you know, we'll see. The summer, we're looking at stuff for the summertime, and international travel might be a little rough right now, but you know, since I'm an American and everyone hates Americans now, so.
Not I, mate. Not I. I told you I had a fucking fantastic time when I was in Nashville. One of the fucking best weekends of my entire life. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. You know, I'll never think of Cold Gin by Kiss in the same way again. But just the whole vibe of the place, I just thought was awesome.
Yeah, it's a great Nashville, definitely.
All right, what do you have for us at number 3?
Number 3, I have Ethereal Horizons by Bloodhouse Nord, and like we were saying, that's like I've been a fan for years. Probably like, I'm trying to think, maybe like 2004. I've been listening to these guys, and every year they put, or not every year, but every now and then they'll put something out, and it's always there's a kernel that connects all their material, but it's all very different. And especially the newer, more this one is definitely a throwbacks in some ways. Like there's more cohesion, and it's still psychedelic, but there's like more, you can discern like more songs on this record. And I just find the drum programming on this to be very like intricate, and you know, just overall just like it's a mood piece, but it's also hits like very hard too, if that makes sense.
Well, something that I really love about this record, as well as the use of clean vocals. I mean, he's done that plenty of times in the past, but on this album, he really, really nails it. Whenever he uses it, it's like he's added an extra instrument, or you know, sometimes multiple instruments. But he always makes sure that it lands just perfectly. You know, there's a completely different analogy, but I think similar principle. I can't remember who the comedian was, but they were talking about the use of profanity in comedy, and the guy was saying, like, you can go on stage and you can F and blind your way through a set, and you know, it's fine and it'll be funny. He says, but the guys that really know how to use a curse word at the appropriate time are the ones that land it, and it becomes, you know, something hysterical, you know, something that in modern day lexicon would be a viral moment. And I think that's true of the way the clean vocals are used on that Bloodhouse Nord album. You know, he could have easily shoved it onto every single song, but instead, when he deploys it, it lands at exactly the right time. It makes real impact. It makes you sit up and take notice. And you know, and that is because it's not constantly brought into the mix.
Yeah, it's you know, that's great songwriting, and you can actually hear the vocals too, which sometimes one of my you know, probably one of my few criticisms is oftentimes the vocals are a little too buried for me in some of the mixes that Bloodhouse Nord does. Yeah, and also this is a band that from the minute you hear the songs, you know it's them. Like they have their own, you know, characteristic that's very discernible from every other band. You know, you know it's Bloodhouse Nord when you first put the record on, you know.
Well, at my number 3, a band that you know it's them as soon as you hear them start, is Darvaza. We Are Him. Put out by Territor Possessions on December the 5th. We've already spoken about it, but let me just bookend our praise of this band by saying the following. Bjorn, or Wrath as he's known, I think is one of the best frontmen in black metal today. He is right behind the likes of Attila and Mortus in terms of vocal capability and how aggressive and fucking pissed off he sounds. He's also a hell of a songwriter, and when it comes to the bands he's been involved in, Behexen I mentioned, he was also part of the Night Shall Drape Us project that put out Lunatic Choir. I think that was back in 2024. And of course that had Spellgoth on, as well as LRH from Horner. He's just a guy who gets what black metal should be about. He particularly gets the rebellion side of things, the almost kind of occult rebellion aspects of it. Embraces that and amplifies that in everything that he does, and the bands sound substantially better for it. Having hung out with him a little bit at Beyond the Gates, I can tell you his personality is absolutely reflected in his music. And, We Are Him is just such a fucking... It's just such an unapologetic black metal record, such a manly black metal record. I couldn't get enough of it. The second I saw it was announced, I immediately cleared a gap in my top 10 because I was like, it's gonna have to be... Something crazy is going to have to happen for it not to make it to my top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a new convert to this band too. Horna is great. I saw Horna and play in Staten Island one year, like 20 years ago, and they were incredible live, man. They were incredible and scary, in the context that I saw them. So yeah,
as black metal should be.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's get to we're getting to the business end of things now. So
right,
what do you have for us at number 2?
Ascension by Paradise Lost. And I was surprised, like I'm trying to put this in a way that is accurate. Like I was a bigger fan of Paradise Lost's earlier records, like Gothic and the early stuff. I like all their other records they made. They've had a lot of different nuances to their music, like this. But and Obsidian was good, but not great. It didn't grab me, like you guys have spoken about that. But this new record, when I first listened to it, I was really surprised by like how it sounds like these guys, this is like their first or second album to me. You know what I mean? Like they feel like a new band on this album. And I like the more extreme vocal element. Like, I think it's cool when they have like the melodic singing, but the first track on the record, Serpent on the Cross, is like, it sort of has like there's these old school like heavy metal vibes to it as well, like with the guitar solo and some of the guitar work on it. But it's just like, it's like this anthemic, like sort of, track. And I was like, right then and there, I was like completely blown away by the record. And then the ballad that you talked about, is like, once again, it's like extreme music, but with almost a classic heavy metal like vibe to it. And you guys know how much of a fan I am of like old school metal, like Scorpions and UFO. And I hear that on this record, but filtered through extreme music. And I listened to this. I still listen to this record pretty much a few times a week, actually. Yeah.
I used the word rejuvenated when I spoke to Nick about the record, and I really do believe it. It sounds like a band that's rejuvenated. And the other thing I'd say, we've praised Nick and his vocals, but Greg McIntosh as a songwriter and a guitarist and a musician he is truly one of the great treasures in our scene, as far as I'm concerned. And I think, having spoken with him, part of where that comes from is he genuinely loves all music. Like and he said it when I interviewed him as well. He is constantly listening to different music and wanting to try and play different kinds of music. And I think that's why he has been able to so brilliantly try his hand at brutal death metal with Valenfire, Still done with his with his flair. He's been able to do incredible stuff on the Host project, and obviously there was the Host album by Paradise Lost, which is kind of more Depeche Mode kind of stuff. And even in the Paradise Lost milieu, he's been able to do so many different things: death metal, goth, all sorts of stuff, and make it his own and present it in his own voice, so to speak. But he truly is, I believe if you had to make a list of the top 5 songwriters in metal of all time, he has to be in that conversation.
Yeah, I think you hit on something. We were talking about how he's a fan of all music, which I relate to that, and whenever I hear that sort of, diversity of interests, that I always like respond to stuff like that.
Mm. I truly think loving all music. Shane Embry is the same way, by the way. But I think truly loving music as an artist, I think is essential for you to continue to be vital after your 4th, 5th, 6th album. These guys that are 4 decades deep into a career, there's not many of them that can still make music that's relevant, besides the ones who continually seek out new music to listen to. And not necessarily new music in terms of new releases, but things they've never been exposed to before. I'll throw in this compliment. You certainly fit into that category. And then a mutual friend of ours, Ralph Schmidt, definitely lands in that as well. You listen to anything that he's done with Ultha, and there is a genuine passion for all styles of music evident in everything that he releases and everything that he writes.
Oh yeah, Ralph. That's like the basis of our friendship, man. I mean, even like when I met Ralph, and our meeting is like an epic in and of itself, man. Like we had just like an epic like hangout. He was back like over 25 years ago at this point, man. It's got to be more than that actually. But yeah, we met and immediately I was like, this is like a guy who's just like me, man. We like all the same stuff. We're into so many different things. I learned things from him. He tells me about stuff, and our friendship is just, one of my best friends, man, honestly, Ralph Schmidt.
Yeah, no, top dude. Okay. My number 2, Scour Gold, put out by Nuclear Blast on February the 21st. I have always been a fan of everything that Scour did, going all the way back to the Grey EP back in 2017. I have championed this band, and I'm sure I've played a number of their songs on the show over the years. I thought that the Red EP that they did in 2017 was particularly strong, but nothing could prepare me for the full-length debut where they unleashed black metal. We were talking earlier about very masculine sounding black metal, but black metal that is so manly that it would add at least 40% to any weights that you lift if you were to listen to this record in the gym, with the help of I would actually argue and say with the help of Phil Anselmo on vocals. I think Adam Jarvis has done something here that blends the best elements of Marduk, Dark Funeral, really killer, aggressive, grimy, old school black metal with something that almost sometimes can sound cinematic, slightly punky sometimes, but also has a very distinctly American feel to it.
Yeah.
And all of it together makes for just a fucking astounding record. And I also, as I was calibrating this top, and I mentioned earlier that I was going to bring up the reason why there is maybe a little bit of distance between numbers 1 and 2 and the rest of my list. As I was calibrating this, I did have to take into consideration the albums that I had listened to most over the course of the year, and Scour, along with my number 1. I mean, there's no question. My Spotify Wrapped suggested that I had listened to this album over 100 times. It's just one of those things where from the moment that it came out, any time that I was tired for something to listen to, I would just default back to either my number 1 album or this one, and I was never left unsatisfied.
Yeah, Jarvis is the man. That guy rules. This record was on my top 10, and we'll talk about that later. But like it carried the for me at least, it carried the year. Like I was like really into listening to this record, but then it just kind of like, as new things come out and you start checking out other things, it's just sort of sunk a little bit in my my list here.
You know what one of the things I truly love about this record is I love what Phil Anselmo brings to the table as a vocalist, because he has a way of writing very abstract lyrics that he then delivers with a very natural rhythm. And then on top of that, for Scour, he has stepped it up from on the extremity scale. So if you take a track like Infusorium, for example, you got that like those deep growls where he's doing like Infusorium, Dystopia, and then when the song like almost picks up a little bit in intensity, and he's screaming like Greater Ventriloquism. It's like it's things that are so simplistic, but they make my fucking toes curl up. I love them so much.
Yeah.
It's little touches that add so much magic to an already great record.
Yeah, he's a talented guy, man. I've always backed Phil Anselmo with his creative output. I mean, probably the band that I like the least that he's done, and I do like them, is Pantera, to be honest. It's like, I mean, no, for real. Like, I love Scour. Scour is great, like Super Joint's cool. Like, I like, like Pantera is awesome. I mean, they're like their own thing completely. But I find I don't listen to Pantera like I used to, but I listen to the other stuff, his later bands, more, if that makes sense. And he's a cool guy too, man. Like, I interviewed him once. We played with Super Joint and the Illegals, like that other band he was doing for a while. And I hung out with him. He's just really cool guy, man. And like very like, we didn't even talk about music. We talked a little bit about music, but then we talked about like horror films, and just like, he's down with all that stuff. He's like, I feel like he's like one of like my kind of guys, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I would agree. And he's proven over the years, I've often felt like he gets a very people view him through a particular prism, and some people obviously are going to be stuck for the rest of their lives on a drunken incident at Dime Bash. Other people look at him as this, shaved head Neanderthal thug from Pantera. But then you see lyrics like the ones that he wrote on the Second Down album, for example, where you've got a song like Learn From This Mistake or Where I'm Going. It's this beautifully eloquent music where he's singing really, really, again, the word beautiful comes to mind, but it's this really eloquent, beautifully articulated singing. I mean, he proved he can do that on N minor as well. He's a guy of far more talents than people give him credit for, both from a singing perspective and as a lyricist.
I mean, if people want to like split hairs on some of the other stuff, it's like, all I gotta say is, in this country, we got more problems than Phil Anselmo, man. You know what I mean? We got like fucking mass motherfuckers like roaming the streets, abducting people. If you want to like put your energy into something, do that. Don't give shit to Phil.
It just, to me, I don't understand people in a scene, being fixated on, as I said, a drunken incident when we all grew up with Ozzy Osbourne, Motley Crue, Metallica, Guns N' Roses. I made this point around Black Braid as well. Like, was there a single show where the Guns N' Roses weren't involved in some sort of altercation in the 80s? And no one keeps, no one will continually replay what happened at the Whiskey A Go Go in 1988 every time that Guns N' Roses does something.
Yeah.
So there seems to be some people where folks get this obsession with, just wanting to tear the person down. Weirdly enough, there seems to be this fixation on Reddit with canceling Nick Holmes from Paradise Lost. And I'll talk about that on my Swirly of the week later in this episode.
But we'll get into that, I guess. But yeah.
You'll have to listen to the Swirly. I'll tell you afterwards as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Might have had something to do with him appearing on this podcast.
I'm people fucking bore me, man, when it comes to this shit. You know what I mean? It's like, get out, touch the grass. You know what I mean? Take a walk. Be good for you.
No, I agree. Completely agree. Okay. Now, the big moment, the moment of truth. We will start with yours, Mike Hill. What was your favorite album, your number one record of 2025?
My number one record of 2025 is Evokin's Mendacium, which is the long-standing death doom band from New York. And this record still gets played almost on a daily basis, man. And it's like, I think a fantastic album, and it goes back more into like what they used to do, which was like more extreme. There's like actually I think there's a couple of blast beat moments on this record too, which is unusual.
There are.
Yeah, and they're once again, they're another band. You kind of know what you're going to get, just like these somber, intense, brooding, long, wintry songs, and that's exactly what this record delivers. But it's like done in such a way that it just really, it's ingrained itself, in me. And it's just, I like that kind of moody stuff too. So it's but also, like I said, the vocals are a little bit more extreme as some of their more recent records that come out a few years ago. The one that was on Profound War was like, the name escapes me at this moment, but it's that record was awesome, but it wasn't as awesome as this record. And this
are you referring to Hypnagogia?
Yeah, yeah. I always had trouble saying that name, actually. So yeah.
Don't worry, I have trouble saying anything that's not English. I have made a point this year, though, of I will try my very best to not mispronounce band names, particularly those that are in French or Scandinavian. But I will say about Evoken, my initial impressions of this record were very positive. As I mentioned to Carl, it reminded me in some ways of one of my favorite records, which is Exuvia by the Ruins of Everast. Yeah. But you and Carl have for sure shamed me into going back and paying more attention to this, because it did not make my list. But I think that is purely because of the fact that there was a bunch of other stuff coming out at the same time, and I just didn't listen to this as much as I clearly should have.
Oh, the new Beverast record that just came out is pretty awesome too, man.
Hell yes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I actually saw Ruins of Beverast and Evoken play together, man, in New York, probably 15 years ago. Wow. Yeah, there's this guy who used to fly these bands over, and he's just set up these 2 or 3 day festivals, and they played on the same bill. Like Rune Magic played one year, and so many. I don't know how this dude afforded to do this, because the shows were not huge. There's maybe 400 or 500 people, but somehow he pulled it off.
Well, I won't be seeing Evoken, but I will be seeing the Ruins of Everast at Beyond the Gates later this year, alongside Emperor, Testament, Electric Wizard, 1349 are playing as well, Beherit are playing, Galsveard I'm going to be seeing, Marduk I'm going to be seeing again, so I'm very excited about that.
That's awesome.
All right. Right now, my favorite album, the Into the Necrosphere official best album of 2025. I think if you've been paying attention, this is not going to come as a surprise. Werewolves, the Ugliest of All, released on the 19th of September on Back on Black Records. I've had this album since the very beginning of the year. So, I was listening to it, more or less nonstop as soon as Matt sent it to me. Now, most of the Werewolves albums have almost all been relatively high up on my lists, and every year that they've come out, and going all the way back to The Dead Are Screaming, that came out back in 2020. My favorite song off The Dead Are Screaming was the third track, a song called Dog Knotted, and part of it was part of the appeal to that song was something that Matt did on the track, which he has been on successive records has been doing more and more frequently, is throwing in these very kind of short melodic breaks. It's like this very dark black metal style melody. It betrays the fact that he probably listens to Panzer Division Marduk at least 4 times a day. But he does it, and the way that he executes it is so good and usually so infectious and so memorable that those were always the points on every single album, whether it was What a Time to Be Alive or From the Cave to the Grave. You always wanted to come back to those songs because they had those big moments in them, and those moments that you remember and that were just so catchy and just stood out so much. The Ugliest of All has that on every single song.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every song has a break, or has that melodic bit, or has that bit of black metal thrown in for good measure. And so from the opening song, Fools of the Trade, all the way to the title track at the end of the album, there is not a single song on The Ugliest of All that is not supremely memorable. alongside retaining everything else about the band that is great, whether it's Sam Bean's vocals. I think this is one of Dave Haley's best drumming performances, which is genuinely saying something, because that dude has been across so many fantastic releases, going all the way back to me infamously asking Eric from the Amenta whether they used a drum machine. And he said to me, no, our drummer's name is Dave, and I can assure you he's not a machine. But there are just so many high points on The Ugliest of All, and it just makes for a album that, as far as, I don't care whether you want to do a black metal ranking, a death metal ranking, an extreme metal ranking. To me, this was, as far as extreme metal is concerned, the best thing that came out in 2025, and it's still an album I continually go back to. If you for whatever reason, if you slept on it, go immediately. Listen to the fifth track, The Inshitification, at least 5 times, and then go back and start the album from the beginning. You'll see exactly what I mean. But a phenomenal release by 3 exceptionally talented and almost consistent to an almost superhuman degree. I mean, I happen to know of a few other things that may feature their work, may feature their handiwork this year. And I can tell you something. I mean, these dudes aren't running out of steam anytime soon. They are supremely talented.
Matt's also in Faustian too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, Matt is like an incredible guitar player, man, and songwriter. And
all three men are in Faustian, I should say.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't realize all 3 of them were. Yeah. But I like his playing, being a guitarist myself, like he the thing that he achieves, that none of his songs sound like riff salad. You know what I mean? Like sometimes these guys are like, these really sick players will throw too many ideas into like one song. And, that kind of tech metal stuff is guilty of that all the time.
Yeah.
And there's no cohesion. It's like, this kind of salad of riffs. Matt, it's all very musical, and it's all very, there's a logic to the way all the riffs fit together, and it all kind of builds into a song, as opposed to just a collection of like riffs. And there is a very distinct like catchiness to, there's a melody, there's a melodic element to, even though it's brutal and extreme, there's still like a melodic element to it. And yeah, it's just, he's fantastic, man. The band, Dave Haley, everyone's great in that band.
It's incredible, actually, how many of my favorite albums of the last decade he has been a principal player in. The 3 Antichrist Imperium albums, of course, the debut was 2015, but, all 3 of those albums were my favorite albums the year that they came out. Every single one of the Werewolves records has been fantastic. The Bremelin albums that he played on, Never Enough Snuff and Sins of the Father, both good. The We Come as Angels, Faustian EP, magnificent. And as I said, he's just a guy that doesn't seem to run out of steam or run out of ideas. I don't know how he does it, but he somehow seems to, anytime that they put out something and you listen to it and you go, how do you top this? He figures out a way to do it.
That's a good choice, man. And I wish they'd come to the States, man. I'd love to see these guys out on tour up here, but who knows if that's going to happen. I mean,
they've not been to Europe either. I know they've just opened for Abath on the short tour that he did in Australia, and everyone who saw them, including our friend Drew Goth, said that they ripped. So I mean, they're never going to be as big of a band as I think that they could have been if they were based in the States or based in Europe, and that's just purely because of geographical proximity, how often they're able to tour and play. But they're certainly, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's a death metal band, and I like a lot of modern death metal, but there's not a death metal band that's been more consistent over the course of the last 6-7 years.
Good choice.
Yeah. Well, there you go, guys. I know you'll probably have a couple of honorable mentions. I'll just talk about a few very quickly. So I have to mention this, even though the album is deeply flawed, I still can't help but like it. Spirit World, Eldorado, Testament, Parabellum, Sanguisugabog, Hideous Aftermath, Hex Vessel, Nocturne, Terror Corpse, Ash Eclipses Flesh, great record. Trying to think what else there is. Those are probably the ones I'd name off the top of my head. But any come to mind for you?
Yeah, definitely. Some of these were in my my top 10 for a while. The Scour record, Gold, was there. Lord Belial, Unholy Trinity. The King's Grave, Stormcaller. Drutka, Shadowplay, as well as Windswept, The Devil's Vertep. Let's see. Oh, one record that it still would have made my 10. Final Dose, Under the Eternal Shadow. Have you heard that band?
No, but I saw that they've just put out a new single recently, have they not?
Yeah, they're just, it's very, very punk influenced black metal. Like, I don't know much about the band or what bands the guys in that band played in prior to that, but it has like that, that grimy, punk hardcore sort of vibe to it. But it's clearly like there's like, probably occult lyrics, and the whole image of the band is very dark.
They're on Wolves of Hades, the same label that has Lamp of Murmur, and I am correct. They've got an EP coming out called Endless Woe. But yeah, that wasn't really an album I listened to very much. One I should mention two actually I should mention that I neglected to add to that honorable mentions list. Hexella, The Ancient Gaping Mouth, that came out on Hell's Headbangers, really good record. And then Tooth and Nail by Dormant Ordeal, very, very good stuff as well. Like, prime Polish extremity, which, again, Poland always delivers. So, yeah. But Mike, it has been a huge pleasure as always. Thank you very much for helping me continue this tradition. Is this the third or the fourth year that we've done this?
I think it's 3. I think it's the 3rd year.
Yeah. All right. Well, same time next year.
Hell yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it.
We need to have a think about what we do as a 666 countdown. I still get comments on the Thrash episode that we did, you, me, and Sheriff Mike Scondato. So we're going to have to think about what we do for that.
We got to pay attention, man. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. The Legion demands it. All right, my friend. Great to see you as always. Take care of yourself, and we'll speak soon. I'll let you choose a song off the Werewolves album since you're the guest. So, gentleman's choice for a track off of the #1 album of 2025.
Oh, actually, give me a second here because I don't know the names of any of the songs. Ugliest of all. Let me see. Dead air, man. Sorry about this.
No, don't worry. I can edit it out.
Yeah, I'm not one of those guys who knows all the names of the songs. Let me see.
I'm terrible.
The 4th song is "Unoriginal Sin." That's the track.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up this portion of the show with "Unoriginal Sin" by Werewolves, and Mike, I will see you again soon.
Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I'm some sort of fucking cunt? Some fucking twat? Do you think I'm gonna have that? Do you really think I'm gonna have that? My fucking ears were burning all the way, fucking back in the fucking tank. You keep looking at me, I'm gonna put you in the fucking ground, I promise you. Of course, we make the wood, more control of your ignitions. Disorder, filling like that glue. Crush the old to burn the new. The poison, suicide, isn't too much to ask. To enforce some different ways. We are so unoriginal. Doesn't matter. It's not one single matter now. They don't have anything to do with us. Why would you rise above them? They have no power anymore. Why yell about the pointless? We are so unoriginal. You fucking shit cunts. All sound the same. Is it too much to ask? To evoke some different names. I get the sense that fictions have damaged your brain. That is if you have a mind. Music blushing from the mind. Was a bullet, now I'm so lazy. Pages to the wine. There is that facilities. The unoriginal sin. We got to be selective.
There you have it, my friends. The song is Unoriginal Sin, the album of the year for 2025, right here on Into the Necrosphere, Werewolves with the Ugliest of All. A well-deserved feather in their caps, and we shall see how they follow that up this year, because, of course, it is an annual event now to have a Werewolves record. I know album number 8 has already been recorded, so looking forward to hearing what those gentlemen come up with next. But truly, they excelled themselves with this one, and it was a very, very deserving number 1. Also, a massive congratulations to all of the other bands that I featured on my top 10, as well as those featured by Mike. As has been the case in the first 2 parts of this 3-part extravaganza, you can go and check out the episode 303 playlist on the website, intothenecrosphere.com, just in case you missed anything, or you haven't heard one of the bands that we spoke about. I'll have all the songs featured on this, I should say a song off all the albums featured on our lists on that playlist, so go check it out. I want to say thank you very much to Mike Hill. Always a pleasure having him on the podcast. We'll do another 666 countdown this year without question, and I know we've been talking about it for 2 years, but I think we're long overdue to do our season 2 analysis of True Detective. I think we were going to call it Making the Case for True Detective Season 2. So I'll speak to him about that and make myself available should he ever want me on Everything Went Black or on Necromaniacs to do that. One other thing just to add, I throw a lot of shade the way of Decibel and Metal Hammer and Louder Sound and all of these other poser websites for when they put out their best albums of the year. And I know, by the time you hear this, we're in February. 2025 is in the fucking rear view mirror, and the best of lists are pretty much done. But I thoroughly enjoy doing these lists. I could very easily release them in November, but then you're going to get something half-assed. If I put it out in November, no doubt I could get 4 or 5 times the number of clicks that I do for these episodes when I put them out in January. But I would rather have 500 diehard Legion members listening to an episode than have 3,500 fucking idiots tuning in, and then I give you something that's half-baked. I'm a busy man. I've got a day job, as all of you know. My day job keeps me especially busy during November, and usually in December I'm on vacation. So I want to have the time to listen through everything that I possibly can, even though it's nigh on impossible, but listen through everything that I can, over the course of a year, or that came out over the course of a year, and give you something that at least has some thought to it and, some authenticity, if nothing else. And I can guarantee you, a big number of these websites that release their best of lists in November and at the beginning of December, the guys that put the selections by the different writers, and even on the websites themselves, like when they do like the overall website top 20 or top 25, or in the case of Decibel, top 40, I guarantee you a lot of those people haven't even listened to those albums. They're putting it on because there are record labels that are either A, giving them money, or providing some sort of other incentive for them to feature their bands. I know that for an absolute fact. You can be rest assured, regardless of what you think of my inclusions on my top 30, there's not a single band that I featured that I didn't absolutely love, and where I didn't listen through that album at least 10 to 20 times. So, take that for what it's worth, but I hope you guys enjoyed it anyway. And next year we'll do the same thing, and I'm going to keep this tradition standing as well. So Mike Hill will be back for part 3. I'll have the Sinister Minister for part 1, and for part 2, I should say, the mighty Nathan Glover. He'll be our man for part 1. And then, of course, next week, as you know, Nick Barker is on the show. We kind of kick off the interview part of the show properly next week. And we've got Nick Barker. The week after, we've got Sakis Tulus. Cheyenne from Trivax is long overdue another episode of Into the Necrosphere. He and I have spoken about doing another one. And then I'm busy lining up a bunch of others. I could probably book an entire schedule all the way up to April with a number of people that I can and want to get on the show right now. So good things are coming if you're a member of the Legion. Let's just put it that way. Right now, my friends, if you've ever admitted in public that a news headline or a social media post left you literally shaking, then take your soy juice and hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
Okay, my friends, as always, we kick off on metalstorm.net, the finest metal news website in all the land. On Friday morning, Marco from Stellar Master Elite, my very good friend, sent me a WhatsApp message creaming his little shorts over the new Cruel Force single. And now, I have to say, in the 6-7 years that I've known him, I think it's actually 7 years now, we're in our 7th year of friendship. If there is one thing that little German bastard knows, it is the sound of a solid black and thrash track. It says here in the article, German black and thrash metal machine Cruel Force has shared a video for Whips a Swingin', the first single from their upcoming studio album Haneda. That is due out on March the 27th, 2026. Happens to be my birthday, so start saving up for those tributes. And it'll be released via Shadow Kingdom Records. Let's dig into this. Let's find out whether old Marco's reputation for recommending excellence will remain intact after this song. Okay, I'll pause there. I think the first thing to say, without question, if you are a card-carrying metalist worth your salt, there is no way that you didn't listen to that and go, that is a darn sight better than the latest abomination by Creator, or the god-awful Megadeth final album. I mean, it's not even comparable. And I do love the fact that two high-profile bands, bands that are, have been operating at a high level commercially, can be completely outshone by, a bunch of fucking German thugs from the underground. But that certainly is the case on this song. And I mean, even if you put those comparisons aside, the track is fucking excellent. I did actually, in full disclosure, after Marco suggested I check out that song, I went back and I listened to their other records. Their first and third in particular, I found to be particularly impressive. The first one came out in 2010. It's called The Rise of Satanic Might. And then Dawn of the Axe is the one that came out in 2023. That's their third album. Both of those absolutely need to go on your rotation. If it not already, or if it hasn't been already, or if it isn't currently, it is really, really good stuff. And looking forward to whatever Haneda ends up sounding like. I mean, you can hear they're continuing on with the Teutonic traditions. There's definitely some early Sodom in there. I mean, there's even a little bit of Bathory in that track. If not in sound, then definitely in feel. But yeah, overall, I fucking love it. Top notch for me, I think. I will say to Marco, if he's listening to this, your reputation is safe, at least for another week. But yeah, good stuff there. One thing just to add, though, and I know I've mentioned them many, many times, but I'm going to say it again for those who haven't got the message yet. If you like this style of music, when it comes to blackened thrash, you are going to have to go back to at least 2009 to the Destroyer 666 album that came out that year, Defiance, to find a better blackened thrash release than Daiva's debut album, Through Sheer Will and Black Magic. That album is a absolute masterpiece, one of the best debuts of the last decade, in my opinion. Like I said, best black and thrash album since 2009, and I would say that it actually tops Defiance as well, pretty comfortably. And just one thing to add as well, because I mentioned my Spotify rap to listen count, not just on this episode, but on last week's episode. Daiva was actually in my top 5 most listened to albums on Spotify again this year, 3 years after the record was released. So that tells you something. I mean, it really is a fucking masterpiece. I've had the guys on the show as well. So at this point, if you're not paying attention, I don't know, then maybe thrash metal, maybe metal isn't for you. Maybe Clawfinger is for you. Says here, Clawfinger have shared a new single and lyric video for a brand new smash hit single called Going Down Like Titanic. I don't think that I'm going to inflict this bullshit on you. Just to say, I don't understand who in 2026 has any interest in hearing Clawfinger, aside from the members of a certain subreddit that may or may not be the subject of this week's Swirly coming up later on in this segment. But yeah, I don't see them having any other relevance. I mean, if you listen to Clawfinger, then you may as well start listening to fucking Limp Bizkit. Necrofier deliver a new single. I've been waiting for this. It says here, Necrofier have debuted a Dwayne Cathy directed music video for Fires of the Apocalypse Light My Path 3. This is the latest single of their forthcoming long player, Transcend Into Oblivion. This is also going to be the first one that they put out on Metal Blade, which I think is quite exciting, certainly for them. And look, I've got my views on Metal Blade and on the quality of bands they have released and continue to release, but it is cool that both Necrofier and Cloak were picked up by Metal Blade. Seems like someone there in the A&R department, at the very least, has an appetite for putting out stuff that's, a little more raw, a little more gritty. I have, as luck would have it, heard this entire new Necrofier album. I'll give you some thoughts on it in just a second, but let's hear this track first and foremost. I've been a fan of Necrofier pretty much since their first album. That was Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, for those of you that don't know, came out in 2021. I had Christian from Necrofier on the podcast. We spoke about the record. It was an album that was very brazen in its worship of dissection, but it did so, in my view, in a way that was quite endearing, and it made for a very entertaining record. On that album, there was a track called Betrayal of the Queen, which was a real standout to me, in which I think I brought it up on the first conversation that I had with Christian on the show, because what it suggested to me was that this band had a ton of fucking headroom, runway, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, there was a lot of room to expand and grow and improve. They really stepped it up, I felt, for Burning Shadows in the Southern Night. That was their 2023 record. You know, that kind of had more of those types of songs on. And again, you could start to see them moving away from the dissection worship or the Swedish black metal worship and more into becoming something that sounded like its own thing, like its own entity. As I said before we started listening to this song, I've now actually heard the whole album, and you know, we're not too far away from the release for me to be able to share this with you, but it will be fucking stunning to me if that album does not make my top 30 of 2026, and it's going to make a lot of other people's best of lists as well. It is absolutely fucking sensational. If you like what you heard there, you're going to love the rest of the album. There are, you know, they still sound like Necrofier, but there's been such an evolution in their songwriting, so many more elements added, and those elements, you know, a lot of them, if you kind of pick apart the song, they're all very distinct. You can hear the second wave influences, you can hear the Scandinavian influences, you know, the dissection influences are still there, but the way they've been mashed into this singular entity where everything coexists in a way that, you know, no one element outshines the other, and it all comes out as this, you know, interesting, distinct sounding band that actually does sound quite distinctly American to me as well. I just think it's fucking excellent. It's brilliant. You know, I don't want to pontificate too much. And as I was trying to describe that, I realized I'm thinking in real time. I'm trying to give you my opinion here in real time. But yeah, it is fucking brilliant. If you like that, you're going to love the rest of the record. It's called Transcend into Oblivion, like I said, and it is out on February the 27th. We will have Christian on the podcast as well, but it goes without saying, if that gets an official top-notch from yours truly. And great to see these guys putting out something this strong as their Metal Blade Records debut. Quite how well it's going to go down with the average Metal Blade customer, I don't know. We're going to have to see about that. But, I mean, they also have some very strong label mates in Cloak. So, you know, hopefully we're going to see a Cloak Necrofier European tour happen at some point down the road too. Okay, moving on. Tulus have announced their next full-length release. It says here, Norwegian black metal trio Tulus return with their new studio album, Morbid Desires. That comes out also on my birthday, the 27th of March, 2026, via Darkness Shall Rise Productions. That label, I mean, I generally speaking, like I said to Mike, whenever they put out something, I'm almost always immediately interested. They don't always hit, but they're definitely at the moment on a pretty good run of form. It says here the 9-piece outing was recorded, mixed, and mastered by Andy LaRock at Andy LaRock's Sonic Train Studios in Sweden. They have put out a single entitled Selmay 2, and let's give this one a spin and hear what it sounds like. Okay, I'm going to pause there. One thing, so let's start with what I like about this song. So, firstly, Andy LaRocque's recording sounds great. The guitar sound is fucking cool. It's got a powerful, punchy sound. It still sounds raw enough to suit a black metal band. Nice production, basically across the board. I think the drums sound great. The bass sounds very good, very clean, coming out of the mix really nicely. Great work on the vocals as well. The song has a lot of interesting ideas. Like, I think the use of the acoustic guitar sounds very cool. The clean singing sounds very cool. The melody, when they go into that clean singing section, I think that works really, really well. But that opening riff, there's just something about it that sounds half-baked to me. I don't know how to describe it. It's verging on sounding a little upbeat and positive, if you know what I mean. Like, there's almost a few too many major notes being used in there. But it's just it feels to me like the song is let down slightly by that riff. If that riff were different, maybe the rest of the track would have landed a little better with me. I mean, again, overall, it's not bad at all, and I don't think that it's fair to judge it by 2 minutes and 25 seconds. This definitely sounds to me like something that you're going to need to give time. But at the moment, I'm probably going to take a neutral stance on it. It's neither a thumbs down nor a thumbs up. Of course, you've got Guard on vocals there, whose other band Cold is some band everybody should know. I saw them play at Inferno in 2024, and they were fucking excellent live. Their spiel, their shtick does kind of wear thin a little bit. If you do like a half hour, 40-minute set, but first couple of songs, absolutely brilliant. And I do like their albums as well. Tulus, I've not really paid a huge amount of attention to their recent stuff. I mean, they put out Old Death in 2020, Fandon's Call in 2023, and I've got to be honest, those kind of passed me by. So maybe I need to dig into those again as well. But either way, I'm gonna remain neutral on this one. It's not blowing me away. It's not terrible. There's enough there to suggest that the album could be decent. But there's also a bit there that, I don't know, doesn't necessarily cut the mustard. All right, let's move on to something that is going to be very, very different. So Crippled Black Phoenix are putting out their next LP this spring. Now, we spoke 2 weeks ago about having people on this podcast with differing opinions and differing, certainly, political views to what I hold. There's few bands that are as diametrically opposed to me on a number of topics, a number of agenda items as Crippled Black Phoenix. But that being said, it was a pleasure having Belinda and her compadre on the podcast. And this must have been, when was it? I think I had Justin and Belinda on about 3 years ago, but it was great talking to them. I think that Johnny the Boy project that they did, like pseudo post black metal project they did, I think that's fucking excellent. I still go back to that from time to time, and I've loved all of the Crippled Black Phoenix albums, especially the last couple. I think the direction this band has gone down on the last couple of releases has just been fucking phenomenal. It kind of started with Great Escape in 2018, and it just got better and better with Ellen Gast. Came out in 2020, phenomenal. Banefire in 2022, brilliant. And this one I'm very excited about. So, like I said, it might not be to everybody's liking, but we're going to give it a listen all the same. Crippled Black Phoenix have announced the release of their next full-length installment, it says here, dubbed Schudelhelm. It'll be set free on April the 17th, 2026, recorded at various times during 2023 to 2025 at Chapel Studios in Lincolnshire, UK, engineered by Peter Ritkerk, and we don't have to go down the list of credits. Let's get into this one. That is definitely the most accessible thing I think I've heard by this band to date. Maybe with the slight exception of a couple of the singles that they released for Ellengast. But I mean, even there, this is something that you could probably put on the radio, and people aren't going to rush to switch it off. Now, a couple of people might hear me say what I'm about to say and go, but you like this band, or you hate this band, you hate this band, you say this band sucks, but you like this. I do. I love it. I don't know what it is. I mean, I think it's it's not hypocrisy by me, and frankly, why the fuck should I explain myself? But it is more a case of how well they execute what they do. They don't make the style of music that I normally gravitate towards, and yet me, who spends the vast majority of my time listening to black and death metal, can dig into this and go, that sounds fucking excellent. I love it. I think Belinda's performance is superb. I love her sense of melody and how she manipulates melody over the riffs and over the other instruments. It's just fucking superb. And then I really do think you listen to the rest of the band, and it's just a band that they draw from a very, very broad palette of music. And to the point that I made with Mike earlier, I think as a musician, especially as you get older, the more music you consume and the more you retain your passion for all styles of music, I think the more relevant you can be in whatever genre of music you operate in, whether that's black metal, death metal, grindcore, or whether it's something like this. And from my short interactions with, or relatively short interactions with the folks from Crippled Black Phoenix, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I mean, these people listen to, anything and everything. They are true fans of music, and it is reflected in what they do. Yeah. From my perspective, I'm going to give that a top notch. Top notch with a caveat. If you're, if all you listen to sounds like the Necrofier track that we heard earlier, it's probably not going to be your scene, and I get that. But for me, I think it's fucking superb. All right, moving on. We've got a couple more songs to listen to this week. I keep an eye on shit as it comes out. I consciously stay away from listening to a lot of stuff. I mean, if there's like a new Mayhem song, then obviously I'm not going to wait until I record the news rant to check that out. But I'll always tell you in advance if I do listen to something. And I will, in the interest of full disclosure, I will say I have listened to the next track we're about to check out quite a few times, as a matter of fact. Uada releasing their next LP this April, details unveiled. We spoke about this last week. And it just so happens that two things were announced that I think are pretty fucking funny. One is that they on this album, they have a cover by Rome. And the reason I say that's funny is because I didn't know that at the time. But obviously, I compared that previous single that they released to Rome. And then they've just put out a cover by, a cover of a Nirvana song. The classic Something in the Way. Now, I do really like that song in its original form. I think it particularly grew on me because of the way that it featured in the Batman. I thought that it was just a perfect song to have as the soundtrack to that movie. That, by the way, best Batman movie without a fucking shadow of a doubt, in my opinion. It beats all of the Christopher Nolan movies, including The Dark Knight. But anyway, This cover, certainly something I was super interested to hear based on how good I thought The Purging Fire was. So let's get into it.
Underneath the bridge, the top has sprung a leak, and the animals I've trapped have all become my pets, and I'm living off of grass and the drippings from the ceiling. It's okay to eat fish, 'cause they don't have any feeling. Something in the way.
tell you something. There's two things that I did not have on my bingo card for 2026, as they say. One was that I would enjoy a cover of Something in the Way as much as I have done. That is top notch without question. That is the perfect way to do a cover. We've spoken so many times before on the news rant about great cover songs and what, in my opinion, makes a great cover song. But what truly defines the perfect cover is a band that consumes the song and then expresses it back to you in their voice, rather than basically doing a karaoke version of the track. Black Sabbath by Typo Negative comes to mind. That's one of the best covers I've ever heard in my life, if not, a contender for the best ever. Let's Get Physical by Revolting Cocks, a fucking brilliant cover. And this is absolute perfection, in my opinion. Great vocals, great instrumentation. It captures the feeling of the original, but it adds in so much nuance, so much texture. And frankly, another thing that I did not have on my bingo card for 2026 was that I was going to enjoy a cover song by Nirvana so much that it would make me go back and completely reassess my thoughts on UADA as a band. I've said for quite a while now that I've not been convinced by this band. I've not really enjoyed their music very much, but I've enjoyed these last two tracks that they've released so much that I've actually gone back, listened to Devoid of Light, Cult of a Dying Sun, Gin, Crepuscule, Natura, and I'm starting to like it. It's starting to grow on me. So that to me is quite an achievement. If you can get a naysayer like me to actually pay attention to you again and like you so much that they're willing to revise their stance on something, I think you've done pretty well. And I can't wait to hear the rest of this EP. I think it's going to be absolutely fucking brilliant. I say EP. It's 41 minutes long, so I think they're looking at Metal Archives. They are actually presenting this as a full length. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. And like I said last week, if they did want to go down this direction on a more permanent basis, or even bring this style into the black metal that they do, have like one or two songs like this scattered across an album, I would absolutely be on board for that, no question. So another top notch as far as I'm concerned. And again, understand it's not going to be to everybody's liking, but I think it's fucking excellent. Okay, Winterfylleth have signed with Napalm Records and announced their new album being released. The UK's atmospheric black metal ensemble Winterfylleth have signed a deal with Napalm Records and concurrently announced the release of their new studio album dubbed The Unyielding Season. That's being released on the 2nd of March, and it was recorded by Chris Fielding at Foal Studio in Wales, mixed by Chris Fielding and Chris Norton in Wales, and blah, blah. We don't have to go through the credits, like we said. I don't know what it is with Metal Storm and their insistence on leaving out critical information and news about the band. I mean, sometimes they'll leave out the release date of the album, but they'll list in detail who produced it, who mixed it, who recorded it. So I've always just found that to be a bizarre tick on this website. But anyway, the song, or the name of the song that they have released in creating a bit of buzz and anticipation for this record, is called Heroes of 100 Fields. Let's give this one a spin.
Watch me, build on the
One of the things I've really enjoyed about Winterfylleth over the last couple of records is that they have increasingly moved away from being kind of headlong into the atmospherics. And if you were to kind of look at it on a spectrum, so if like on one end it's, you know, extreme blasting Panzer Division Marduk craziness, and on the other side it's like the most atmospheric black metal band you can think of, they have definitely started to move towards, you know, at least finding some sort of middle ground where the atmospherics can coexist with a sound that's a little bit more abrasive and a little bit more aggressive. I don't know whether that is the influence of Russ Dobson from Necronautical, who joined them in 2020. You know, I don't know where it comes from, but you could definitely hear it on the Imperious Horizon that they put out in 2024, and you can absolutely hear it on this single. I mean, I would argue this is a perfect way to follow up to the Imperious Horizon, and I mean, definitely one of the most confident and assured sounding Winterfylleth tracks I've probably heard since the finest hours of the Imperious Horizon. And I mean, I thought the best song on the Imperious Horizon was In Silent Grace. They did have a bit of an advantage there in that they had Alan Averill doing vocals on that song. So, you know, that's always going to give any band a fucking shot in the arm, in my opinion. But Winterfylleth continue to get better and better, in my opinion. So, definite thumbs up. Potentially even a top notch. It's been a pretty good week so far, I've got to say. I mean, we could have brought the tone down by listening to that Clawfinger track, but I thought I would spare you of that ordeal. Interesting that Winterfylleth have moved on from Candlelight Records after 7 albums, and they're now with Napalm Records. I bring that up because I mentioned it when I had Carl on the podcast last week. I felt that I felt that the last Abduction album, Existentialismus, I got my tongue all fucking tied up there. Existentialismus, I really felt like that album should have been on a lot more people's radars than it ended up being. And, you know, there is a point where you have to say, you know, what is the record label actually doing for these bands? You know, I don't know anything about the background as to why Winterfylleth decided to leave them. But it certainly seems to me, I mean, even if I look at the Imperious Horizon, that's another album that, you know, potentially should have done better, I think, for Winterfylleth than it ended up doing. So I don't know whether over the years somebody at Candlelight Records has fallen asleep at the wheel. Not sure what's going on there, but I would not be surprised to see more bands leave that label. And again, frankly, I think in this day and age, you know, bands shouldn't put up with any bullshit. You know, there is an increasingly limited amount of value that a label can add. And I feel like a lot of labels still have that mindset of 1994 where they think everyone is just so fucking delighted to, you know, be signed to a label, or, you know, particularly one of their labels, that, you know, they'll just sit back quietly and get fucked out of as much money as possible and kind of give while the label just siphons off the dollars. So, yeah, good on them for that. Congratulations on the new record deal. I hope it's going to work out a lot better for you. And certainly the Unyielding Season sounds like it's going to be a fucking banger. Okay, Slaughter Day drop a new track in support of their oncoming full-length release, Dread Emperor. German duo Slaughter Day offering listening the last advanced single called Astral Carnage. I think we really liked on the news rant the previous single that they put out. I can't quite remember the name, but I do remember Slaughter Day getting a thumbs up from yours truly. So, yeah, without any further ado, excited to hear what this one sounds like. I will be honest, I was about to write that song off, and then that D beat bit that we just heard now, that kind of salvage things for me. I mean, I still can't remember what the song was that we listened to previously. I think it might have been Terrified, but that definitely had more personality to it than Astral Carnage, which is the one we've just listened to now. This kind of sounds just very much like a fuck around in a band room one Saturday afternoon, riffing on some old Grave tunes, maybe some old Dismember and some old Entomb tracks, and they kind of came up with this. And it's, for what it is, it's decent. It's very well performed. It's well delivered. I think the vocals sound really, really good. Bernd Reiner's, I mean, sounds like a fucking beast. I think the production is decent, but as I said, it kind of lacks personality. It's just one of those bands where it's been done so many times before. If any band is going to do something similar, or if any band is going to attempt the style, they need to bring something to the table that's a bit more interesting than what we just heard now. But like I said, what does salvage it a little bit is that D beat break when they do the Astral Carnage part. That sounded quite cool. The rest, I mean, again, I'll still listen to this album when it comes out, just based on my on remembering what I thought of the previous single. But this one probably going to end up with a neutral as well. It's not bad enough to merit a thumbs down, but it's definitely not going. It's definitely not going to get a thumbs up. You know, you need to work for your thumbs up. You're on Into the Necrosphere. All right, we're going to do one more song. And then we might jump over to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. There is something there that I'm particularly keen on hearing. In Eternum premiere the Vile God of Slime song. The Vile God of Slime is the second and final advanced single from In Eternum's oncoming Of Death and Fire record. It has surfaced online. This album is going to be released by Soul Cellar Records. Let's give it a spin. Going back to what I was saying earlier about Slaughter Day, in stark contrast, In Eternum dabble in, I mean, you could argue dabble in similar territory, but there's just so much more about the song that is interesting and that keeps your attention. Like I actually, when I checked the time that had elapsed, I was like, I could quite easily have left this thing to play through in its entirety. I fucking love that. Again, nothing about it is hugely original. It is just executed extremely well. Great atmosphere. It sounds fucking menacing, manly. I think that David Larson's vocals sound fucking badass. Pera Carlson, who's the drummer, is really good as well. But he, by the way, is another gun for hire in Sweden. He plays with a ton of bands: Angel Blast, Darkened, Devil's Force, Dreadful Fate, Eldfod, Nominon, Parasite, and that's in addition to his duties within Eternum. So a busy man. He was also the drummer, by the way, for Destroyer 666. He played drums on 2016's Wildfire, and he was also the drummer on the Call of the Wild EP. So I mean, you also have a pedigree, a musical pedigree that at least has a track record for participating in and or contributing to the writing of music I like. So that is going to get a thumbs up. I think that's very cool. Haven't really paid much attention to In Eternum, to be quite honest with you, but I will now. No question about it. Okay, over on Blabbermouth, there is a article about Carnivore AD releasing their first single entitled Social Decomposition. And that's going to be from their upcoming Transmutation EP. Now, you guys know my thoughts on anything that has to do with reviving any project that once featured Pete Steele. There's been a lot of talk about a reunion show with the members of Typo Negative, and who knows what vocalist they'll end up using. And I'm skeptical about that, based entirely on the fact that Pete Steele is such a force and such a titan in what he did, and so unique and so distinct. To me, it's like if Glenn Danzig were to leave this mortal coil and they start Danzig AD. It's not something that I would be interested in hearing. But that being said, I am very, very curious. It says here, Carnivore AD featuring bassist vocalist Baron Misuraka of Sheer Terror and Darkside NYC, guitarist Chuck Lenhan of Crumbsuckers and Christian Death, and then drummer Joe Cangalosi of Creator, Massacre, and Whiplash will release its first ever studio EP, Transmutation, on March 27th via Apostasy Records. March 27th, my birthday. I don't know if I mentioned that. 5 tracks, it says here. The single that they've released is of the 4th song, Social Decomposition. Let's give this one a quick listen. I figured I may as well just let that one run until its last minute. But or last second. But yeah, I think that's actually pretty decent, to be honest with you. Surprisingly so. You know, he most definitely doesn't sound like Pete Steele. You know, Baron does a decent job of sounding angry and menacing, and you know, he definitely does a reasonable job of impersonating Pete's style around Carnivore and Retaliation. But if you take the song for what it is, I think that's actually pretty decent. It's certainly a lot better than the fucking Typo Negative tribute / ripoff bands that have crawled out of the woodwork. What was that fucking band? Neon Gods or Neon Demons? My brain just blocked it out because I don't want to accept that it even exists. But this is good. I would give this a thumbs up. I mean, I'm not going to consider it even connected to Carnivore. I'm just going to consider it punky hardcore played in a Carnivore style. And if you think about it that way, then it's not bad at all. I was going to show you guys the trailer for the new Al Jorgensen movie, but I decided against that because honestly, it's so fucking bad. You know, you may as well watch the trailer to a new Neil Breen movie. Instead, I think I'm just going to have us dip straight in to the Swirly of the week. My friends, this week's Swirly takes us deep into the swamp of online self-righteousness and weapons-grade stupidity known as the Is It Sketch subreddit. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see I have it up. The reason I bring it up is because many skeptics questioned whether such a forum could even exist. I actually had conversations with people that didn't believe me when I first mentioned it to them. Friends, I can assure you that it is horrifyingly real, and even a casual glance at the frenzy of activity amongst the 7,200 weekly visitors who no doubt all reek of BO, ball sacks, and bum sweat is enough to make you lose what little faith you had left in the human race. Littered across its pages, there are posts going after some Into the Necrosphere favorites, even some prior guests of Into the Necrosphere. A recent one put out today. Have Alan or Simon of Primordial ever addressed that they had a Blackened Speed project called Perdition that put out one demo named Blood and Honor? Is Trey Azathoth racist? There's another one here about immolation. There's one about internal bleeding. Internal bleeding, by the way, get given short shrift by this crew because apparently the band supported the cops during BLM. However, the post that we're most interested in talking to today and the subject of this week's Swirly is one put up by a 32-year-old slattern called Her Phantom Mountain, and it is about Paradise Lost. In an attempt, apparently, to revive the pearl-clutching concerns over old Nick Holmes, Phantom Mountain posts, their vocalist Nick Holmes went on a far-right podcast. He also follows far-right people on Twitter, including famed transphobe Graham Linehan, who harasses trans people, including children. Paradise Lost have always been a favorite band of mine, but these connections seem pretty sketchy to me. Her lamentation echoes an earlier post that earned its author a turbo wedgie as well as a trip down the toilet on this very podcast. For the most part, because the podcast in question is the one that you're listening to right now. But since we've already given that intelligence-bereft dipshit more time than he deserves, the truly deserving Swirly recipients this week are the mindless simpletons who, when presented with this absolute fucking horse shit, just literally go along with it. No interrogation, no questions asked, no research of their own. They just believe it no matter what. Going down the list of some of the comments here, we've got Axion Salvo saying, "Oh, for fuck's sake, to quote the famous meme, not another one." Max Glands, "Man, I really liked Bloodbath." Noctilus 1919, I've learned to accept that pretty much all these metal guys are dumb as fuck. Uneducated, stupid people that just happen to be lucky. Bicycle for two. This one is perhaps the most damning. They constantly perform in Israel. Now, a few days ago, my wife was watching a Netflix documentary about a religious nutcase named Jody Hildebrand, and I only caught bits of it, but dollars to donuts. The people that I just mentioned, along with every other fucking sheep in the comments on this particular thread, are no different from the Mormon psychopaths in that show. Same blind devotion, same room temperature IQ mentality, same frothing, gnashing outrage anytime that they encounter something that even slightly pushes up against their moronic worldview. As far as I'm concerned, to even consider these dorks a part of the scene is a fucking insult. These people are an infestation. They're a virus. They are no part of any scene that I'm part of. They don't deserve our patience. They don't deserve our tolerance, especially not in 2026. What they do deserve is to be lined up, given a double atomic wedgie each, a triple dip dunk, a boot up the ass, and a friendly go fuck yourself as we show them the door. And that, my friends, was the Swirly of the week. All right, that brings us to the end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. A big thank you once again to Mike Hill, my very good friend, my fellow horseman of the podcasting apocalypse, for joining me, as is now our standing tradition, to reveal the best album of 2025, according to Into the Necrosphere. Congratulations to everyone who was included in my top 30. Massive congratulations to the Album of the Year recipients, Werewolves. No doubt both Werewolves and Mike Hill will be back on the podcast at some point, and I will be back next week with Nick Barker. Trust me, you guys are not going to want to miss this conversation. It got very heavy, but it is something that, absolutely unmissable. I think it's one of the most important conversations I've recorded in a while, and I'm very excited to share it with you. Whatever it is that you are doing and wherever it is that you are right now, right this very minute, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.
What would bring me crazy glory?